The Stonecrest Podcast.
Spreading awareness within our community.
Thank you guys for joining us for another episode of the Stonecrest Podcast. I know it's been a while, but we had to come back for this in particular because, again, we need to make sure that we are aware, that we are engaged, and we are learning about our community every day. And there's another election that is up upon us, and this one is for the DeKalb County CEO. And we are making every effort to bring you the candidates so that you can make sure you are making the most informed choice, because we want you to A, vote in the know, and B, don't vote blind. So today we want to welcome with us Commissioner Steve Bradshaw. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you. You know, we're here. We had some snacks for you. Didn't want them, but we're happy to have offered them nonetheless. We hope that we warmed you up so that you could spend the time speaking to the audience about things that matter to you, and so that we could understand your candidacy better. So I'm going to transition everything over to you. If you could just take this moment and tell us a little bit more about yourself in general.
So, yes, my name is Steve Bradshaw. I've been serving on the DeKalb County Board of Commissioners for the last 7 years. I represent East Central DeKalb County, which encompasses the municipalities of Avondale Estates, Clarkston, Pine Lake, Stone Mountain, and about a third of the city of Tucker. And I feel like over the course of the last 7 years, we've delivered for our constituency everything from a brand new state-of-the-art senior center to a food pantry at Wade Walker YMCA that I fund, to a Rise Up Youth Leadership Development Program that I fully fund. So I feel like it's been a successful tenure in the county commission so far. The timing's right where it seems appropriate for me to step up to the next level, keep DeKalb County on the trajectory that it's on. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity to go through this election cycle and take office in January.
Thank you so much. If you guys didn't know him, you know him now. So with that being said, I have this question that throughout my career, I've asked young people, older people, but we had an election here in Stonecrest just for the mayor and for our city council members. But we asked each mayoral candidate this question, and we got so much good feedback. I'm bringing it up to the CEO level. Okay. So I want to kick off this interview with, what is one thing you would choose to do if you could not fail?
Yes, if success were completely guaranteed and failure was not an option, I would drive economic development in South DeKalb. It has been long overdue. I think there's been a lack of focus and a lack of leveraging the resources that we have. I know it's not easy, so I don't want to be misinterpreted as casting shade on anybody. But if I knew I couldn't fail, that's what I would focus on for sure, making sure that, I'll put it this way. I'd love to see the area around, say, South DeKalb Mall or Stonecrest Mall look like the area around Perimeter Mall.
You're speaking my language. You're trying to get our votes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I used to have an office in the Perimeter area, so I'm very familiar with it. I mean, the traffic is a pain, but you can see what it looks like around there. And it's doable. It won't happen overnight. But if I was guaranteed not to fail, that's exactly what I would do.
And I would say that you probably wouldn't fail, because the people in this area, South DeKalb, Stonecrest area, we're all desperate for opportunities like that, to have those experiences on a day-to-day. So I can see that if you were able to make that happen, right, to work with the business developers, that there's no choice but to win.
Well, it's a question of leverage and applying the leverage. We have an entity that's charged with driving economic development. It's called Decide DeKalb. Unfortunately, up until now, they've been chasing what I call the low-hanging fruit in other parts of the county. They haven't been directed, guided, cajoled to focus on South DeKalb. When I'm CEO, I will make sure that happens. And the leverage points are two. Number one would be the amount of money I allocate to the agency from DeKalb County. And number two is my board appointments. CEO gets to make all of those board appointments. And as people are interviewing with me for a potential spot on the Development Authority board, I would make sure they know what my priority is, which is driving economic development in South DeKalb, and make sure they do that once they're in that seat that I would appoint them to.
That makes total sense. I think I got the wrong degree because I suddenly want to be on that board. I suddenly have interest, not qualified at all, but it's so interesting.
I wouldn't be so sure about that. So we need people with a diverse set of backgrounds and perspectives, certainly with a business orientation, but getting a diverse set of backgrounds is really critical to driving what we want to try to do.
I'm so glad you said that, right? You kind of cascading into my questions. Let's go ahead and ask the next one. So, because right now I feel that you're speaking with authenticity and transparency. So the question is, how would you rate the importance of transparency in the CEO role? And what method would you use to promote transparency from the top down? As you mentioned, you get to make all the board appointments and stuff. So I feel like this is a great question. Come next.
So transparency is critical. This government is paid for by the citizens of this county. So they need to know what's going on. So I like to say that I will clearly communicate my intent, both internally, meaning the employees that work for DeKalb County government, and externally, meaning the citizens who are paying for DeKalb County government. One of the things I've done as commissioner is have a quarterly town hall meeting, a quarterly breakfast meeting, where I just invite everybody from the district, and really it's open to anybody to come out, listen to the department heads, right? But have a chance to ask me questions for as long as they want. So that is something I'm going to continue as CEO. I'll move it around the county. So I'll do one in South DeKalb, one in Central DeKalb, one in North DeKalb. I may not be able to do them every quarter, but my goal right now is at least 3 a year. And by the time my first term is done, I will have hit every area of DeKalb County at least twice.
I can't complain. I can't complain because there's people who are in a much more micro local government who don't do that as well. So,
well, the reason I did it, Angel, is for two things. Number one is to demonstrate in a tangible way my accessibility. But it's good for me too because I hear direct feedback from the constituents. I mean, if somebody's going to get up on a Saturday morning, come to a community breakfast meeting and ask their commissioner a question, they're motivated and they want to hear from me, not through a filter. And I'm happy to stand there and answer questions for as long as people want to ask them.
Well, that's good. Well, since, I love taking advantage of situations that I'm in, right? Leveraging my comparative advantage. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this for all of me and my neighbors. We need more police in Stonecrest. Okay, there we go. Just gonna drop that in there.
Thanks for sharing that.
We and I don't want to say police just in general, like we need more people waving batons, but just more of a presence.
No question.
And
well,
all of those things.
If you don't mind, it's interesting that you mentioned that because candidly, we have a shortage throughout the county in police officers, and after much interface with the chief and a lot of the precinct commanders and, other line officers, I think what I'm going to be required to do is do something pretty dramatic, both on the compensation and benefits front, so we can both retain the officers that we have and then serve as a recruitment tool to get those numbers back up. Because right now, because our precincts are understaffed, all they're really able to do is answer calls. Right. And then our police officers get burned out over time because the workload's too heavy. That's not good long term. Right. We don't want cranky police officers.
Please,
on the street.
We definitely do not want cranky police officers.
It's a priority. It's public safety is the number one priority. So I'll move on that pretty dramatically. Everything's budget dependent. But if things work out, I win in May. I'll have several months of runway before actually taking my oath. And I'll use that time to put some concrete plans in place so we can hit the ground running in my first budget cycle.
When I talk to my husband about our budget, I'm going to see if I can give like 3 more cents or something like that. See what we can get. 3 to 5 more cents, not more than 5. Whatever we can. I like to make big demands and minimal contribution.
Understood.
Right?
Understood.
No, thank you so much for that. If you don't mind, can you give an example? Because, I just threw that out there, mentioning the police because it was fun to do.
Sure.
But can you give an example of how you implemented a change requested by constituents? So you're already a commissioner. Can you talk to us a little bit about something you've done that your constituents have already asked for?
Sure. So the thing that comes readily to mind is the senior and community center that we built at the corner of South Hairston and Elam Road. So I love to tell the story because when I was campaigning in 2016, it really wasn't something that was on my radar screen. But I'd been in office about a month and I got presented with a report outlining the distribution of senior centers and community centers throughout the county. And it was clear there was a gaping hole right in my district.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is a need we got to fill. I'd heard tangentially, I've got, some of my constituents that go to Lew Walker and other places, but they have to drive a pretty good distance. They wanted something close to where they were.
Yes.
So we went about the business of trying to put the funding together to build it. And I can tell you, it didn't happen in a straight line. My first approach was to just ask for a line item in the county's budget.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was about $7 million.
Oh,
that got promptly rejected.
You heard me like, wow, that's so much money.
But then you go to plan B. It's like, I'm not going to give up because that need is there. My citizens are telling me that would be a great thing to have, Steve, right here closer to us in our district. So we went to plan B, which was pursuing funds through what's called a HUD Section 108 loan. Fortunately, we had borrowing capacity in our community development department. I worked with the community development director to start to get that funding in place. And then a curveball. Okay. So everything was fine up until then.
Okay.
Then a curveball. So my assistant, my constituent coordinator, was a competitive swimmer in high school. And we were sitting around the table. Having one of our planning meetings. And she asked the simplest question, which was, how come this facility can't have a swimming pool? How come? Why not?
Right.
Well, you start putting it together. Turns out doing that added another couple million to the price tag of the building. And that became an issue for some of my colleagues on the commission.
Okay.
So I had to work through that, fight through that. Long story short, we got it done. We got the appropriation. Toward the end, I kicked in about $350,000 from my own office budget to get us over the hump. So there wasn't any kind of funding gap. But the facility's built. It's on property that DeKalb County already owns. So that saves some money up front.
Absolutely.
We didn't have to purchase any property. It's adjacent to one of the parks in my district that I've funded the revitalization of, Hairston Park. So there's great connectivity between the center and the park. It's got a swimming pool. The citizens love it. It's wonderful. So I've been in there a handful of times since it's open, and I love going and watching the swim classes going on. And, when I walk in, everybody's so sweet. Hey, Commissioner Bradshaw, it's good to see you. Thanks for doing this. It's very gratifying. It's extremely gratifying. So, and the beautiful thing about that is that facility will be there serving the citizens of my district long after I've left politics. It'll be there. And, I'm very, very proud of that. But getting it done was not easy.
Nothing worth having is ever easy. So we were talking about marriage, right? And all that stuff. So there it is. Nothing worth having is ever easy. As CEO, you kind of mentioned like you get to make all the board appointments, which I think was probably educational for some folks. Everyone doesn't understand.
A few boards in particular I get to make. There's some, and forgive the interruption, but some boards, commissioners have appointments too. But on Decide DeKalb in particular, the CEO gets to make those appointments. They have to be ratified by the commission, but they're essentially CEO appointments. So
got you. Okay. With that being said, there's power. I like power. So you need to maintain professional relationships. And then in the past, DeKalb County has had integrity issues and stuff like that. And we don't need any more like that. So how would you maintain these professional relationships while making sure that everyone's bought into your vision?
Sure. So I'll answer that question this way, right? I recognize the CEO position is a position of authority and power. I get that. But that's not what I'm driven by. So I started my professional life as a United States Army officer. And what I tell people is that people have been saluting me and calling me sir since I was 22 years old.
Yes, sir.
So I'm not driven by that. That's not what motivates me. What motivates me is doing the work and delivering for my constituents. I had a corporate career. I was high enough in the organization. My company had a skybox at Turner Field when the Braves played there. It would literally get assigned to me 8 or 9 times a year.
Oh, wow.
Go entertain some clients. I mean, that's what I'm used to. So I'm not seeking this office for any perks or any power, or as Bill Clinton used to say, some people run for office to be somebody, to be something. Other people run for office to do something. Mm-hmm. I'm in office to do something.
I liked it.
Yeah.
And there was a time that I thought I liked Bill Clinton. I was not old enough to vote for him or anything. So, hey, there you go.
Well, that was a good thing that you said, because it has the virtue of being true. I mean, I'm not in politics or governing to be somebody. I was somebody before I ran for office. I'm here to try to deliver for the people who put me here.
I like that. I was someone before I even got elected to office. I like that. I'm going to try to say that. I'm going to use it on my husband. I was somebody before I was your wife. That's what I'm going to say next time he's mad at me, trying to tell me something. You know what? I was somebody a long time ago. Right. So thank you for letting me have that moment of epiphany for me too.
Sure.
All right. So DeKalb County has a particular structure, a way of being organized, right? The CEO, we have the commissioners and so on. So based on our county structure, which elements would you keep the same? And within your authority, which elements would you strengthen?
So where we need to strengthen things is in the area of service delivery. Mm-hmm. We are not good at service delivery. And I know that because I have somebody in my commission office whose sole job is constituent service. I would say 80 to 90% of the calls we field in our office is because a citizen tried to call a department and didn't get satisfaction. Mm-hmm. Everything from I can't get anybody to return my phone calls to whoever I was on the phone with was rude to me. I mean, that's poor customer service. And what it distills to, Angel, is I have to drive a cultural change in that regard in the county. So the citizen interface with the government that they're paying for is a positive one. So, and, driving cultural change is not easy. Mm-hmm. When I was teaching, I used to teach a course on organizational culture and leadership. I've lived it in several iterations of my professional life. I know it's not easy, but if you're really interested in turning things around, you have to drive it, and you have to drive through the ultimate objections. There's a phrase I used to use with my students all the time when I was teaching, which is the status quo always has a constituency, meaning however things are, as bad as it might look from the outside, somebody is benefiting from things being exactly the way they are, and they will resist change.
Yes, because they enjoy it.
It's up to me to push through that resistance and get to the other side where I'm absolutely convinced there are legions of people begging for the opportunity to do the right thing.
Absolutely.
They've just been conditioned to keep their heads down, don't make any waves. Steve will be gone in a few years. Don't worry about him. He ain't your supervisor. I am. Mm-hmm. So that's the paradigm we have to break.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And it actually tells a story of something that's more deep rooted. That's the area that you believe we need to strengthen. So with constituent services or customer service would be the idea of thinking of it for DeKalb County. Is that also the biggest problem you see in the county, or do you see our county having something different as its biggest problem?
Well, the biggest challenge I alluded to earlier is public safety and getting our numbers up in public safety. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, making sure that this government is business friendly and responsive to the needs of our constituents is a very, very close second. So alongside the economic development that I want to drive, but they're all related, right? It's all connected. So, and that's what I keep in mind, is that these things don't happen in isolation from one another. They're connected to each other.
I do agree. And you've had a lengthy career in many different aspects. So you've been in the military. Mm-hmm. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
As well as being a commissioner. So you've been in politics and in the private sector as well, I'm sure. What is the biggest challenge that you've faced so far, and how have you overcome it, or is it something that you're still working through?
So I'll frame it this way. When I think about my 7 years in office, one of the biggest challenges was my very first budget vote in 2017.
Wow.
So I was a brand new commissioner. DeKalb County's budget is not inconsequential. It's $1.5 billion.
That's a lot of money.
So, you come in January 1st as a new commissioner, we got to pass a budget by March 1st. That's a couple months. It's a lot to digest. And the dynamics on the board were such that there was resistance to the first budget that Michael Thurman put forward. And, in one of our open meetings, I asked him point blank, do you feel like this is what you need to turn this situation around? Because for years, DeKalb County had been operating in what's commonly referred to as a structural deficit, right? That's not sustainable long term. Right. So he applied his considerable leadership management skills to start to orient this government toward being fiscally responsible and showing a surplus every year. Long story short, I became the deciding vote. My very first budget vote.
Wow.
Now, I could have hid behind the fact that I was a new commissioner. I could have abstained. That's not leadership. I'm there to make hard choices. And taking that vote in February of 2017, while it was hard, looking back now with 7, 8 years of reflection, it's one of the best votes I've ever taken since I've been in office. But there was resistance. That vote wound up 4-3.
Wow.
So
basically down the middle.
Yeah. And Michael Thurman says I was the deciding vote. So I'll go with that because it was, it's kind of daunting when you're dealing with something of that magnitude for the first time.
Absolutely.
So, but we got through it, and DeKalb County's on a solid fiscal footing now. Very, very proud of that. I happen to be chair of the budget committee now. I was last year. I am again this year.
See, that deciding vote got you handling the money all the way through. I see that. I see it was a strategy.
Well, I chaired a couple committees before I became chair of finance, audit, and budget. But it's a solemn responsibility because it's not Steve Bradshaw's money. It's the taxpayers' money.
That's right.
And I take that very, very seriously.
I thank you for taking it seriously. I believe you when you say that as well. Mm-hmm. When I think about you being commissioner, some people might just say the next step makes sense for you to run for CEO, or that's, what he's done as commissioner, the next logical thing. He's already ready to be CEO. It's very similar work, but I want to hear in your own words, in your career, what has prepared you to be CEO of DeKalb?
I think it's the full spectrum of my experience that I would bring to the table. So I started my professional life as a United States Army officer. The military taught me discipline, devotion to duty, self-sacrifice. And people underestimate sacrifice as a leadership quality, but it absolutely is. The military taught me that. My corporate career taught me respect for the numbers. People have great ideas all the time, big grand pronouncements and all the stuff they want to do, but most things don't happen if they're not resourced properly. Mm-hmm. So you got to make sure the numbers work. Then I got to be an adjunct college professor at Georgia State for a few years. I really enjoyed that. Maybe someday when I'm finished being a practicing politician, I'll go back to the classroom, but being in the classroom taught me patience. I've had 7 years on the board. 2 of those years were as presiding officer, chairman of the board. I led the commission through probably the most difficult time in the county's history when we went into the COVID pandemic.
Oh, man.
And had to transition from what we were doing to an entirely virtual environment. And I can tell you, I'll share this. It's been said that adversity builds character, but that's not quite true. What's more true is that adversity reveals character. And that period revealed a lot of things about a lot of people.
Absolutely.
You find out what somebody is really made of when they're squeezed, when they're under pressure. Mm-hmm. So all of that adds up to judgment, temperament, the proper vision, and, just the person who's going to go to work. I mean, just going to come in, day out, and go to work. I'm not going to be jet setting around the country. I'm not going to be, sitting on a bunch of panel discussions. I'm just going to show up and go to work because the challenges are significant and they require day in and day out focus. And that's what I'm going to deliver for the citizens of DeKalb County.
Goodness, now I don't want to be CEO because if I can't jet set, what is the purpose of having CEO in my title? If I can't get a plane, why are you calling me a CEO? Look, I own a business with my husband. I was like, you're the CEO because you know why? We don't have enough money for a plane. When we do, I might try to take the seat.
You know what? It would be great if we had a private jet. DeKalb County doesn't own a private jet. I'm not going to go down that path. But I think you get the larger point that
Absolutely.
I'm making, that it's just about doing the work, right? I'm not in it for whatever perks are attendant with the office. That's not what motivates me. What motivates me is doing the work and delivering for the people who put me here. That's what motivates me.
And that's what makes sense. And that's why you're the man running for the job, not me, who's very materialistic and superficial. We know.
Oh, please.
I'm telling you.
Don't get me wrong now. I like nice things, and my corporate career afforded my wife and I a good life.
Yes.
We've been very fortunate. She was able to retire 4 years ago. So,
my goodness. Say it louder for the man I married. Retire me.
So we've been fortunate. I'll go so far as to say is we've been blessed.
Amen.
I mean, I have a very religious upbringing. Both of my grandfathers are pastors. So
double whammy.
I could have gone down that path when I was a boy. The church ladies tell me I was going to grow up and be a preacher one day. I think that ship may have sailed already, but I never say never.
Never say never. For those who are called, you just don't know. You just have to hear the call and, I'll just see what happens, Mr. Bradshaw.
Exactly.
Yes. Oh, Pastor Bradshaw. All right. So just transitioning, you've really shared a lot. We've gotten a lot of insight. Mm-hmm. But if you were going to articulate it yourself, what is your philosophy for running the county?
So my leadership philosophy is to be transparent and collaborative, right? So DeKalb's governed by a governing authority, which is the CEO and the county commission. After having served on the county commission for 8 years, I think I have a sense of what a county commissioner might want and need from the CEO, and vice versa. So I would operate in a much more inclusive way in terms of involving commissioners in things like the budgeting process early on, mm-hmm. and just making sure the lines of communication between us are open. But I have a leadership presentation that I do. I got to do it again last week at Georgia Piedmont Technical College. So I distill my leadership philosophy into an axiom that I call 4C, 3S. So the 4 C's are competence. You have to know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Confidence. You have to be able to project that you know what you're doing. Courage. It's important to be courageous, because a role like this requires making some tough decisions and being unpopular for a while and being willing to be unpopular for a while. Mm-hmm. The 4th C is compassion. The people that work for you have to know that you care about them and that you are not just a stepping stone for them to get to wherever they want to be. And then the 3 S's are what I call: first is a sense of God. And notice I didn't say belief in God, because I respect that everybody doesn't believe in God. I'm a man of faith. But what I mean by that is just a sense that there's something bigger always at work, that you as an individual aren't in control of all the variables, because we're not.
Indeed.
Okay. And once you get to that place in your head, for me, it induces a kind of peace. So sense of God. The second is what I call a sense of history. A lot of leaders make the mistake of coming into a new position and operating like the world began the day they showed up in that office. And, everything my predecessor did was wrong. Well, that's short-sighted. It's foolish. You got to have respect for what's preceded you, because everything gets to where it is for a reason.
Absolutely.
Right? It goes through some sort of evolutionary process. And the last S is a sense of humor. You got to be able to laugh. You got to be able to derive pleasure out of what you're doing, because these jobs can be very stressful. And if you don't have an outlet, if you can't laugh at yourself, enjoy the people around you, then what's the point?
I like that. You already know I'm hovering around that last S, right? But nonetheless, thank you so much for sharing that. I love those type of acronym iteratives, so thank you.
You're welcome.
The last question that we have before we have you talk to us specifically about your campaign is, there's trends always in life, right? We're in cycles. There's nothing new under the sun, but the way it's presented might be something different. So with considering the trends in our county, where do you see us being in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? What do you see?
So 2 macro trends will be more growth. We need to accelerate that growth. But the other macro trend is more diversity. That's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've been stuck for years in a paradigm of black and white, but DeKalb County is a whole lot more than black and white.
Absolutely.
I mean, you drive up Buford Highway, they're not black or white.
Absolutely.
I happen to represent a district right now where I have the city of Clarkston within my district. We've got a ton of African immigrants from all over the continent. You know, I forget how many different languages are spoken in a 1 or 2 square mile area.
Wow.
Somalians, Eritreans, you name it. And that diversity is going to continue, and we have to be prepared to embrace that diversity and make sure everybody feels integrated and a part of this government, because that trend line is not going to stop, right? We've got to break ourselves out of old paradigms that have outlived their usefulness and see DeKalb County in a more comprehensive way. And that way we can, drive the economic development that we want throughout the county, but primarily in South DeKalb, where it is needed the most right now.
Awesome. I thank you so much. I've enjoyed my time getting to know you better, and I think that the audience has as well. I would love to give you this opportunity for you to talk to us specifically about your campaign. So tell us all about your pillars, all about your core focuses, and then obviously where we can find you, how to connect with you, all those things.
Yep. So I want to share with you why I'm running for DeKalb County CEO. 2 major reasons. First reason is because I happen to love DeKalb County. My wife and I made an overt decision to move to DeKalb County over 30 years ago. And our flag is planted here. We're not going anywhere. We want to see this county move forward and prosper in a dramatic, profound way. The second reason that I'm running is I'm doing it in response to everybody who's asked me to run. People all over this county, South DeKalb, Central DeKalb, North DeKalb, who have watched the way I've conducted myself in office for the last 7 years, and who have said to themselves, yes, that is what we need at the next level. So that's why I'm doing it. It's not for Steve Bradshaw, the greater glory of Steve Bradshaw. I'm not in it for that. I'm in it to serve the people who would ostensibly put me in that seat. In terms of my agenda, I can distill it for you. I'm going to wake up every day fighting to make DeKalb County safer, cleaner, and business friendlier. Safer, cleaner, and business friendlier. Now, each of those elements has multiple legs to them, but I'm convinced that if we can attack aggressively across those 4 fronts, we will lead DeKalb County to an entirely different level. And I'm really, really looking forward to that. So for more information about my campaign, you're welcome to visit my website, which is believinsteve24.com. And I would simply say to the citizens of DeKalb County, my ask is that you believe in Steve because I believe in you. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you so much for joining us, Commissioner Bradshaw. Do you have a social media handle on Facebook or on Instagram?
Steve Bradshaw for CEO.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Commissioner Bradshaw. We look forward to finding you on all of your platforms. Congratulations. I saw that sense of humor right there, so we're definitely looking forward to it. Thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Stonecrest Podcast. We will catch you next time.
The Stonecrest Podcast.
Spreading awareness within our community.